Well, welcome back into the mid-Norfolk garden. It's starting to look a little bit like summer here. We had some rain overnight, which was the first we've had here for almost a month, and everything's really just exploded with the freshness that you get after a nice clean downpour. We've got Aquilegia starting to flower. Shooting this in a little courtyard where it's quite sheltered. Just look at that lovely full double, held beautifully upright. Got a sprinkling of this pink flowering strawberry that just runs through this. It's not really a border, it's just a gravel planting. But the real wow factor right now is this honesty that's just at its peak. A biannual seeds freely into this gravel and rewards you with these spires of colour at this time of year. This little strawberry, I think it was sold as an ornamental, though it does actually fruit, but not to any great degree. But then it's not really doing its fruiting in a particularly sunny spot. We just let it run along the back and through this planting, and it's very pretty, if quite subtle and low. It's running at the back of this wall rather than at the front, where we'd appreciate it more, so you've got to get up close really to see it. But let's take you through into the main garden and show you, because we've got some fantastic blossom and the new formal garden's coming on quite nicely, so let's go and have a look at that. Just come round onto the other side of that wall, and we're in deep shade here at this time of day, although we'll get the sun later on. Just looking at this clump of hostas. Lovely curled leaf. It's quite compacted, really could have done. It's one I was going to split earlier in the year, but I've missed the boat again this year. Well, you can still split and divide them at this time. It does knock them back a little, and I'd have to water for the rest of the season, so I'm probably going to leave that until next spring. Above it we've got this beautiful Montana. I think it's a Testarossa. Beautiful full pink, just clambering over the wall, doing its thing both on this aspect and through into the courtyard, and a really good volume of colour through on that. On the bank we've still got the last of the narcissi and daffodils. This little yellow variety in the front's one of my favourites. It always is one of the last to flower on this bank. It's a real delicate little combination of buttercup yellow and a buttercream centre, and it does reliably every year flower right the way through, and it's one of the last to actually hold its form. We're still keeping this flowering though, with a combination of different types of bulbs we've got in here, including the narcissi, which tend to be the last. But incredibly here we've still got on this quite sheltered bank some snowflakes, which really should be well over by now. These were moved from one of the paddocks last year, and they're starting to establish nicely, but very, very late. This orange cream scented large flowered daffodils also quite late. Still got some doubles up here. We're keeping this bank looking good by deadheading. If you remove all those dead heads, it feeds the bulbs more, gets better quality larger bulbs for the flowering next year, but also just tidies up the display. And if you can put a mixed planting in on a bank like this, then you will extend the flowering season. We had this initially with the tete-a-tetes of February golds, now completely over, and the green still just feeding those bulbs. But by deadheading them, you get to enjoy the fresh growth coming from the later varieties. The geraniums in the lean-to conservatory really are coming back into flower now. We'll do a separate video showing you progress in there, but from the outside really giving a big blast of colour. And the wisteria we showed you on the wisteria video, still a massive flower, but starting to brown off now, so past its peak, but nonetheless impressive. Beautiful planting, and below it we've now got the forget-me-nots and the catmint starting to come up with, yes, that's bindweed coming through, so a little bit of picking over and weeding to do on this border. The euphorbia I split about 3 years ago now is really starting to establish in clumps, doing very well here, and giving this burst of colour that feeds round now with these azaleas starting to emerge. That yellow-orange one's really going to be spectacular when that opens, but the red's now just about in full flower. The white one is one of the last ones to open up, but the overall effect from a distance really is a blast of shocking colour. It's really spectacular, and the smoke bush behind it still just emerging from its winter hibernation, but it's just starting to break here. Still got that to look forward to. I still think you can't beat apple trees, and this is a Bramley for a flowering display in May. And just look at this one, daffodils under it, still just picking their way along into the middle of May, and the bluebells now really in full flower. Just look at this lovely naturalistic planting with campion, the cow parsley coming through the top. All weeds in some people's view, but we let these flower here, and it just gives that depth to the border rather than it being all at this single level. Got a lovely planting here of the natural English bluebell and some pink bells coming through. Just look at this one, little clump right in the middle of a big patch of blues, but this is what you'll get if you grow enough of them. Little clumps of versions, and here's another one just starting from a seedling that's spread itself along here. They're not as vigorous as the Spanish bluebell, but beautiful. And if you do grow the two together, then the Spanish one will swamp it and cross with it, so you'll lose the natural English strain over time. But isn't it beautiful here? Look, I'm planting with the campion, the bluebell, and then the powder blue of the forget-me-not running through. Is just so fantastic at this time of year. Another one of my favourite small flowering and fruiting trees is this quince, which forms beautiful, great big orange specked quinces in the autumn, but at this time of year has these beautiful pinky white large flower blossoms in a good enough volume to give you a real good impact. I pan back, really quite an unusual flowering tree that most people don't recognise, and really is of interest to them when they are told what it is. The rhododendrons on the bank doing very nicely. The early pinks we showed you earlier in the season, now just about come to an end. Still a little bit of bud and blossom on them, but it's really these large big red ones on this long aspect on this southeasterly facing bank that are popping at this time of year and doing the best they've ever done, I think. We've got more bluebells that are just naturalised in this bank now. Most of these daffs have been deadheaded and over. Just a few of those little later ones we showed you just picking their way through, with the bluebells. Fritillarias now just about over. Still just the last of the whites. We've got this red magnolia that's still a way off flowering yet. Got eaten really badly by deer a couple of years ago, so we've got the protectors on to try and give it a chance. Hasn't really recovered fully. The cherry tree now in full blossom. Just look at the volume of pure white double. No scent to it, no sweetness in the air either. That's the problem with these trees. They look beautiful, absolutely lovely to our eye, but of no use to pollinators or bees who just can't access them. I didn't realise that until a few years ago when I started paying attention to planting for the insects that are in such decline. Long run on the garden's looking quite nice. These borders now, the hyacinth banks that we showed you are finished. The roses coming on nicely, more forget-me-nots, and the formal garden really now starting to take shape. We haven't done much planting since we showed you last time, but I have completed top dressing these two new borders with spent mushroom compost. That's really given them a good, nice, clean appearance. Starting to get a little bit of that daisy coming through from where it was growing before. But we'll be planting these up over the next few weeks, and I'm really looking forward to getting a combination of roses, peonies, geranium, all sorts of other things we've got in here. Lavenders along here have taken really well. These were planted out about 3 weeks ago, and they're already budding up. They're not going to be massive plants for the display this year, but if we can keep those growing away, should form a nice little hedge here which is upright and will allow me still to mow along this grass edge. where we put the boulders in as the edging for the borders, and that's going to be planted with catmints that will just tumble over the borders onto the gravel paths. We've started planting those already. I'm just going to show you some of the plants we're dividing. They're getting established very well. These are all just older plants that we're digging up from other parts of the garden, splitting, almost bare rooting and planting out, and does them no harm at all. In fact, catmint, I feel, benefits from digging up and dividing and replanting in fresh compost every couple of years. They tend to lose their vigour in the centre of the clump when they get too woody. So these will do very well, I hope. We've got more on that side, and we're going to repeat the planting going down these two sides as well. So overall, it's doing very well for the time of year, looking very settled. Mature shrub plants I'm very pleased with this year. Going to do a bit of pruning on that back just to take some of the dead wood and the sycamore that always shoots away at the top out, and hopefully we'll get a bit more of this fine Norfolk weather to continue doing that this weekend. Thanks for watching.